Good afternoon. Welcome. Everyone hear me okay? Excellent. So I want to begin this afternoon and my talk by drawing your attention to this book. And if you can't see it, well, someday you should check it out. It's a book by Aristotle. In fact, it's Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And Aristotle is especially well suited to serve as a model, maybe even a mascot, for our conference today. Aristotle was a student of philosophy, but he was also a student of biology. Aristotle studied poetics, but he also studied politics. He studied psychology, and he also studied logic. And I think, those are dentistry students back there? Yes, and Aristotle was known for having excellent dental hygiene as well. In short, he was a wonderful, wonderful man. And indeed, Aristotle dedicated his life to many, if not all, of the disciplines that are represented right here. And his was a life lived well. I begin with this particular book, though, this particular copy of Aristotle's Ethics, because it speaks to the importance of undergraduate education. This copy is one that I got as a freshman for a course long ago. And obviously it has stayed with me ever since. And it stayed with me for a lot of reasons. One, I just love lugging maroon and white books around. That's really enjoyable. It's great. But it's also stayed with me because of the one animating central idea of this book. And it's this, that virtue, that excellence, that arete in Aristotle's Greek, is essential to a life lived well. Now, before launching into this whole discussion of what Aristotle meant by excellence, I want to just explain my relationship to this topic and why I've chosen it today. Aristotle has always appealed to me because he takes a both-and approach. He extols the life of the mind, but he also extols the life of concrete practice. To live well, we need both the life of the mind and the life of concrete practice within real-life communities. In my own attempts to live well, or at least live well enough, I've often felt like I had to choose. Either I can do a PhD program and forget about my connection to the so-called real world, or if I embrace the real world, I lose my connection to the things that I've loved and cherished for so long since I was a freshman in college. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you never have to make difficult choices, and that I haven't had to make difficult choices. In fact, sometimes life does force upon us an either or. But sometimes with a bit of luck and no little amount of determination, we can affirm both, like Aristotle, both the life of the mind and the life of concrete, practical life. And so that's what I want to talk to you a bit about today. I'll begin by explaining what did Aristotle mean with this term arete. It's a word usually translated as excellence or virtue. And then I'll suggest why we should embrace intellectual life for its own sake, as a practice of excellence. And finally, I'll suggest how an unyielding pursuit of intellectual excellence can help us engage productively, fruitfully, and practically in the community around us. So let's begin with a brief look at what Aristotle meant by excellence or virtue. The key to what Aristotle meant is just this, that it's not simply a matter of having high standards, should have high standards, but what Aristotle is known for is for saying this, it's about what we do. It requires us to choose and to act consistently and regularly until we actively develop habits that become second nature, that become character traits for us. And it's his focus on doing, of course, that makes him unique among philosophers. Philosophers like to think and think more. And of course, we have the image of the thinker rather than the doer. And Aristotle's whole point is to criticize that. In fact, he says his book, the Maroon and White book, he says this book, this ethics, has no point if it's only to find out what virtue is. Instead, you should read this book in order to actually become good or better kinds of persons. In short, all of us then should inquire and investigate, not merely to know things, but in order to become good or better, or dare I say it, excellent kinds of persons. So what are we doing here at this student conference? And this takes us to my second point. What is the role of academics then in all of this? Now, Aristotle's emphasis on doing, on practice, might lead us to think that he would have skipped out of this conference and said, I need to be outside there doing important stuff, checking out the ones part. They're doing stuff there, right? But it's my contention that Aristotle would have been right here at Deerwood. And here's why. Famously, in his Ethics, he concludes by saying this: the highest form of human excellence is the contemplative life, the life of thinking. And commentators have offered various interpretations, but I want to give you two practical examples which I hope will shed some insight here. Example one starts with Carl. Now, in choosing to speak on Aristotle, I was reminded that there are other philosophers out there. Indeed, another guy with another book, Plato. And Plato was, of course, Aristotle's teacher. And so in choosing Aristotle, I chose a student and the rival to Plato. But I also found in that, I thought, there are other people who make other choices and who make arguments for other things. And in particular, Carl Colavito, who's an organizer of our conference, of course, as well as our humble MC. Not so. I thought we were all thinking, man. But I appreciate you saying it. And during one of our recent dialogue series meetings, and Carl often travels down here to Deerwood just to harangue us with his views on Plato, and we appreciate it. But Carl spoke of another scholar's reading of Plato, in particular, Julia Annis, and also a great speaker. And I thought, here's this great mind engaging us in a great conversation with yet more philosophers and more smart people who care and think. And I thought, that's what it's about. It's about seeing Aristotle and Plato not just as old guys, indeed they are old, but they're also living characters who we animate alive through dialogue, through engaging in conversation. And that inspires me. And that inspires me to think, yep, Aristotle was right, at least on this, that this contemplative life, that this life of the mind is a high form of human excellence. So thank you. Example two. Example two is Maureen McCormick. Now, in considering why Aristotle prizes intellectual inquiry, and thinking about it, I was reminded of a conversation I had with Maureen earlier this semester. And Maureen and I were discussing what our plans were for the summer. And Maureen shared with me how excited she was to spend time getting back to her research on the history of science. And she said that to know her and to understand her, it was necessary to know her research, to know what she spent so much time thinking about and writing about. Maureen's comments inspired me too, and made me feel just a little less dorky. Or at least a little less self-conscious about my dorkiness. Because I'm planning to do the same thing, to spend my time reading and thinking and writing about the things I care about. So what does that tell us here today? Like Carl and Maureen and all of the talented people that you see sitting next to you, you've spent a lot of time thinking and researching and writing. Hold on to that, and don't be afraid to show your excellence. Yes, show it here today, but also show it to others in the future. Remain committed to the intellectual virtues, to the excellence of research and study and writing and thinking and debating. That, Aristotle says, is constitutive of a life lived well. So what does any of this then have to do with the broader world out there, with practical things, with the places we live in and dwell in and share in? Indeed, some of us might be thinking, all this academic stuff is cool and, well, in a nerdy kind of way. But it doesn't have much to do with making the world a better place. Sometimes that's true too. Sometimes we do have to make choices about whether to attend another talk about another philosopher, or maybe do something closer to home, something that may not be as fun, that requires doing. But I'd like to suggest that at least sometimes we can and should do both. And that brings me to my third and final topic, which is how do these intellectual virtues of debate, of research, of writing, how do those virtues, how do they function, or how might they function as civic virtues, as practices that enable us to engage and to transform and to improve the communities around us? Now, I wrote this speech last night before I had the pleasure of just sitting through our morning sessions. And easily, I could set this aside and just say, look at what we just saw. I don't know much about biology, but I learned a lot. And I saw directly how young minds engage with seeing what's going on around them. They think, we want to find out about it. So let's dig in the dirt and measure it. Seems pretty cool. Or we see, so what do we need to know about it? Evolutionary biology. Can I put some screenshots on how to do research? Hey, why don't you teach my students? Really? But I'm still going to stick with what I wrote here, because it's here and I get to the end. So I want to give you two other ways in which we can think about improbable work that might seem as purely intellectual. How can following what really is smart and engages our mind, how can that also contribute to other communities around us? Example one is political science scientist Robert Putnam, who made his way studying democracy in modern Italy. Seems a bit remote from Jacksonville. There's San Marco, of course. Yet when he began studying democratic practice in contemporary America, he found a decline in clubs and civic organizations, groups that not only drew together like-minded individuals, but groups that enable people to interact across demographic lines. Putnam found that unless Americans began actively cultivating interactions across the lines that divide us, then Americans would never remain united for long. Indeed, Putnam's most recent book, Our Kids, published just this past month, explores how a growing economic divide has placed the American dream in jeopardy for many young people. And this unlikely yet excellent practice of academic inquiry can help illuminate what many of you in this room here may face, but also perhaps may one day help to overcome. Example 2 is a student of ancient Greek philosophy, Danielle Allen, who made her way studying, who else? The good Greek philosopher, Aristotle. And it was her study, well, I think she looked at a book or two by later. It was her study of ancient Athenian democracy, though, that led her to reflect upon the community that she lived in at the time, Hyde Park in Chicago. And it helped her address the challenges in particular facing citizens of color in Chicago and cities like it all across America. And in her pioneering study, Talking to Strangers, Allen argues that it is our failure to talk to people unlike ourselves, to cross lines of race and class and ethnicity, that most threatens the health of this nation. The lesson then from these two examples and what they have to teach us is that we can contribute to our communities by doing even more of what we've been already doing today. Speaking to people, listening to people, with skills and insights and experiences deeply unlike our own. So to conclude, let me draw these various threads together and express my message in these terms. Keep pursuing intellectual excellence. Great morning sessions, and I want more. Don't qualify or compromise your passion for inquiry or your joy in knowledge for knowledge's sake. That's what we need. At the same time, challenge yourself to engage with others unlike yourself. If you're a biologist, talk with a poet. If you're a social scientist, talk with a dentist. And then continue these conversations out there. Challenge yourself to find new conversations and new questions, and to build bridges to people like and unlike yourself, across the city, across the state, and across this one globe of ours. That is Aristotle's lesson for us. Practice excellence. Thanks.